Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Idea series by What Are You Made Of? My name is Uzair Iqbal and I'm your host. Uzair like knock knock who's there, and Iqbal like kickball, if you can't pronounce the name. The Idea series is where I talk to companies that are making consumer they're making consumer products out of recycled, upcycled, reclaimed or repurposed items and how they're impacting the world in a positive way. So I wanted to understand how they came up with those innovative ideas in the first place, then turned it into a business idea, and possibly use their story to inspire other creators around the world. So today I am joined by a young British Bengali female Muslim entrepreneur who started upcycling powdered cosmetics into watercolor paints called CosWatercolours. She's an artist, like I said, an entrepreneur, and she was a speaker at the Wired's Next Gen UK Summit in 2019. Please welcome Ameenah Begum.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am indeed Ameenah.
Yes, you are. I thought I might be talking to the wrong person otherwise.
Great introduction, thank you.
Yeah, and so I want to let the viewers understand what your company is about. So can you tell us a little bit about what CosWatercolours is?
Yeah, sure. So I started CosWatercolours, which is a upcycled watercolor paint made from waste cosmetics. So what that means is I find a way to give a new life by transforming old makeup into beautiful, shimmery watercolor paints for artists, hobbyists, anyone really. It's so easy to use. You just agitate it with water and start painting with it. And this is all coming from a material that would have otherwise just have been sent straight to landfills or incinerators. So yeah, it's making use of something that nobody would have thought to use before.
So I grew up with two brothers and not having a sister, so I was not aware of anything about cosmetics, makeup stuff, or so. Can you tell us like what a powdered cosmetic would be? Is that the blush? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Do you know what? It wouldn't have even crossed my mind that people wouldn't know. This product, I guess, you would say is primarily aimed towards women, because it is made from makeup. So the makeup that I would usually be working with would be things that can be turned back into a powder. So things like eyeshadow palettes, blusher palettes, highlighter palettes, things that usually people would be swatching on their hands. A swatch, even that, I guess, would be just kind of testing out a color. So these are all things that people would either be putting on their face to, brighten up their faces with wacky colors or even muted colors. There are just so many shades out there for so many different skin tones, and I just found there was a really unique property and there was a beauty to the beauty industry that wasn't being exploited.
Gotcha. And I know we use this sort of in our environmental field, the word upcycling a lot, and I came across this person who said when he was first telling his coworkers about upcycling, people were thinking, I have to bike up a hill? Like, what exactly is upcycling that you're telling me about? I mean, everybody's kind of familiar with recycling and how that works. So can you explain how upcycling powder cosmetics is different from recycling?
Yeah, sure. So I guess in general, the terms recycling and upcycling, sometimes people do use them interchangeably, and not a lot of people are completely familiar with the term upcycling, which is why I do sometimes use the word recycling as well. So the main thing is that although recycling is great, it's making use of something again, whereas upcycling is making use of something with an added value. So it's not just that you're recycling makeup into makeup, it's finding a new value and an added value to that to make it something that people wouldn't have had before. It happens a lot with all sorts. So for instance, making bags out of plastic bags that you would get from the shops, but being able to make something into a designer bag, which is, you've put a lot of thought into the way that it's been weaved together. that would be upcycling as opposed to recycling, because you wouldn't be making the plastic bag into just another plastic shopper. So
gotcha. Definitely
maybe
not
that gives
biking
them.
up a hill or anything, right?
Definitely not biking up a hill. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe some people could do that, but that's definitely not me.
definitely not what we're talking about here. So and another thing so that I've learned since looking into this is that cosmetics expire. That they do have a shelf life once you open it up, and I think it's like this little like can that has an open lid and it tells you how long it lasts for, right?
Yeah. So this is something that I didn't even realize myself, like the longest time. It's only after I started to do some more research into the cosmetics industry that I realized, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff that I have in my own cupboards that I can't actually use any of that. And then it started to make so much sense as to why I was starting to get like irritated skin and things like that, because when you're looking at the type of products that you have inside your cupboards that you think, oh, do you know what, that's such a beautiful color, I don't want to get rid of it. Sometimes you really can't do anything with it because you're risking damaging your face. So even though you're trying to think, yes, I can make myself look prettier by these colors, you could actually be doing something quite damaging. So a lot of people don't actually realize that cosmetics do expire, and there is a little thing on the label which does usually say something like 12M, and what that means is 12 months. So if you think about when you've had that in your cupboards or drawers or wherever you keep them in, and think, do you know what, actually I bought that probably 2.5 years ago, that's something that you need to think about. And if you're worrying that you're starting to get bad skin, that's probably the reason. So it was just a way for me to be able to make use of something that otherwise was just causing harm, not just to the environment, but to yourself as well.
I can just imagine that the one day when I get married, I'm going to be like talking to my wife, like, hey, it's been 12 months. We need to recycle this into watercolor paint as opposed to like throwing this away. And I can just imagine that already in my head. So you started,
For sure.
You went to University of Sussex and you got a bachelor's in product design. And am I correct that you started working on this back in college too?
So at university, like you said, I did a degree in product design, got my first, which is super cool. I say that with pride. Woohoo, yay. I worked very hard for it. So I'm not ashamed to say that with pride. So product design is kind of, the way that I would describe it is art, engineering and business all encompassed into one. And although there was a lot of focus around the engineering side of things, which is fantastic, I've always been interested in like physics and things like that because I like to know why things do the things that they do. And then being able to be on the creative side of that was awesome. And on top of that, it was really cool to be able to see that my university also had a big focus on sustainability. So in my final year, in fact, before my final year, I went on to do a placement. So I did a year in industry where I worked with an energy and services company, and they were working with renewable energies. So, which is, again, really cool, and an amazing place to be. I got to work in their innovation team, and it just kind of opened my eyes to my first taste of seeing what an entrepreneur is, or what small businesses are able to do, and the opportunities that they can be given. So that was kind of also the trigger for me to think about things more sustainably and my passion into that area. So when I went back into my final year, I started to look into my own habits. And the funny thing is, I actually started to design a product which already existed. And I didn't realize this until 3 months into my final year of university.
Yikes.
So I was kind of screwed for a while. Once I came to that realization, do you know what? The most annoying thing was, it's not that I could even carry on with it because the product that already existed was better than my one as well. So the thing that I had designed was like subpar in comparison to the thing that already existed. So this is where I started to think, do you know what? Rather than stressing about it, let me take a step back and think about my own passions, my own interests and my own skills, and see where I can go from there. And that's kind of how I got into the idea of cosmetics, the industry, seeing how massive some of these companies are and the impact that they have. But then also being able to incorporate my own interests and passions and skills in art and design, and being able to fuse them together was really quite cool. And I think because I had that little bit more passion in the project that I was doing, that's the reason why I managed to succeed in my final year of university as well. So
then still, so the question comes in, I don't think I've ever come across anybody that would have thought of upcycling cosmetics. So where was that, like, the spark that came in and, like, you know what, this could be something, I'm onto something here?
Honestly, it was just a hell of a lot of experimentation. Like, I didn't know if it was going to work or not. It was, I actually got to a point where I was thinking, bloody hell, I've just spent 3 months of my final year making absolute rubbish. And then I just started to think, okay, well, what if I could do something with it? It's just, so it didn't actually start off as a watercolor paint. It started off as just kind of something that I could do with colors, and just kind of adding a load of stuff together and seeing what would happen. It also started off as an oil paint. However, I realized that when you're doing this, you also have to be able to focus it to a particular target market as well. And for oil paints, they were really difficult to get the same consistency or a similar consistency with a load of different makeups. And also, to be able to test it, I would have needed a lot more professional artists to be able to use it as well. So I think that may have been one of my drawbacks as well from developing it as an oil paint. I then thought, okay, let me see the type of people that I do have access to. And I was able to find a lot of artists. For instance, while I was in Brighton, because I went to the University of Sussex, I managed to attend a creative cafe. And basically that was a meetup group where people and artists or creatives would go and meet up and do something, whatever they're doing with their whatever creative project that they're working on. They would bring it to the cafe and we would just meet each other and say hello. But yeah, I thought that was a perfect opportunity for me to be able to try out some of these paints that I was putting together, and eventually I came to developing a watercolor paint.
Nice. So that's an interesting story. And we're also getting questions along the way too, and I'm going to try to get to those as well. So you kind of went with the path of asking the artists of how it is to use these watercolor paints, as opposed to talking strictly with, product designers, like, hey, is this, what does it look like? How am I going to market it, and that kind of stuff. So I think that's really interesting, because people tend to forget the actual consumers who are going to be using this, and that's the thing, you just cut through that and you went straight to them. So that was actually really neat.
Yeah, for sure.
And then one of the things that I noticed was in your video where you were speaking at the UK's Next Gen Summit 2019, which is really cool, by the way, which is a big platform to be on. You talked about how color cosmetics have an estimated growth of around £4 billion by 2019 since 2014. So then, working in this sort of field, what is the impact of what you're doing on the fashion cosmetics industry if people were to just upcycle all those powder cosmetics? That
was a lot of stuff in one bit.
Yeah.
So if I break that down, yes, there was and there still is a massive cosmetic waste problem that I am trying to reach out to cosmetic retailers and ask them not only to donate their cosmetic waste to me, but also for them to realize that this is a way for me to help them reach their sustainability goals, especially with the social development goals that we have quite widely known around the world at the moment as well. This is a perfect opportunity for us to be thinking creatively about what to do. So it's me trying to reach out to them, but also I'm especially as a person on their own, a very small business, trying to reach out to these massive companies is actually a really difficult task. So I was very lucky to be able to speak for Wired. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't realize it was a big deal. And I think that's the reason why I was able to come across more authentically with my speech, because I wasn't trying to overthink it, and I was just trying to let people know about the realities of the project. And the point of my speech was not just to try and say cosmetics industry bad, you know, small makers good. That was not my intention, because at the end of the day, they're doing great things, but they could be doing better. They could be doing a lot better, and I'm literally offering them a solution here. So I mean, I'll still be going at them and still be trying to get them to do something about it, but I'm very aware that this is not the only solution that is going to be able to change the entire industry around. So I very much encourage other people who have a fantastic idea to also contribute towards maybe coming up with an idea, not just within the cosmetics industry. If you can see a waste problem happening and you think something might be a good idea, get it down on paper and actually do something about it, because you've got nothing to lose. And actually, some of these retailers might not be realizing that they're missing a trick here and being able to do something about it. Yeah.
And I remember that you showed like these the drawings on like a napkin, or like these like very rough ideas that you had initially, and then what it actually ended up being later on now. And so let's take a step back. So how does that work? How does powdered cosmetics end up in your hand? Is it something that got dropped off a shelf, or is it something that didn't get sold in the stores, or is it just something that got returned? How does that process work?
Yeah, so when color cosmetics, or cosmetics in general, when they get dropped, damaged, discontinued, they can no longer be sold on shop floors. And hello to the new people joining. So they can no longer be sold on shop floors. So this stuff can literally have no use anymore. They're no use to the company anymore, and they're no use to the consumers, because nobody wanted to buy a broken product. And obviously, if they're damaged or dropped or anything like that, then there's nothing that we can do about it. There's nothing we can do with them. So instead, by kind of finding an alternative route to that and showing that it doesn't have to be for the use on skin, we've managed to now find an alternative route and a solution to something that otherwise people would not have thought about. So it's kind of thinking outside of the box. So even though these things can no longer be sold, doesn't mean that they're useless. It just means that they're not useful for that particular use anymore.
So then how can an average person, so me being in US or somebody being in London, for example, how, if they have any at home that are expired, how can they get those to you then?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a trickier question at the moment because of the whole coronavirus situation. So within the UK, of course, I encourage people to donate their waste cosmetics to me. If you have eyeshadow palettes sitting at home in your drawers, in your dressers, in your cupboards, wherever it might be, in your wardrobes, I know there are so many hoarders out there. I used to be one of them. I'm now a lot more mindful about the stuff that I do use. And realizing that I don't actually need all of that stuff. So it's really, I guess I would also be encouraging people to maybe do a little bit of a spring clean. I know it's coming into summer now, but that's great. You probably realize that the stuff that is in your cupboards that has been sitting there for months on end or years on end is no longer of use, and you might need to replenish that stock. But rather than chucking all of that stuff in the bin, send it to me. I will happily turn it into a watercolor paint that can be on sale for as many people as possible that would want to buy it. Artists, hobbyists, as a gift. These are all perfect examples of how to spread the message. The main thing about this project is not just to encourage people to reach out to the cosmetics retailers and let them know that I exist, but it's also just to kind of make that message a lot clearer and show that small actions can make a big difference. So what
Exactly.
people can do is, one, they could, yes, send me their waste cosmetics. Two, you could try to think of, if you've got a creative idea, then by all means, put it down onto paper and discuss it with someone, see if you can make it a reality. These are all really practical steps. And number three, email retailers and let them know that CosWatercolours exists, and that they should be speaking to me, because I would love to make this on a much wider scale rather than just doing this as on a small scale where I'm working with local people, and which is great, and I still want to continue doing that. But if we want this to make a really big impact, then these are just really simple things that we could be doing. And finally, I guess the other thing is to actually buy the paint and make some amazing artwork with them, to be able to spread a really creative and really warm message to let people know about creative initiatives and things that we can be doing to help our environment. So
Gotcha.
There are so many things that we could be doing, and especially during the coronavirus, it's even just a little bit of support with a shout out, or if it's sharing something with a friend or tagging somebody in a post. All of these things are still useful, but of course the sales are something that will actually help you to move forward and
Exactly.
expand the business and spread the message on a much wider platform.
Yeah,
So,
because you can only do so much of like spreading the information about it or telling people like, hey, this is a really cool idea, but it really comes down to, if nobody's really buying the product, then it's not a sustainable business at that point. And then you answered a couple of questions already that I was going to ask, and one was from Nida about how the coronavirus has impacted your business, and the other one being like, how can a person sort of help this initiative. So one of the things that you brought up that is really neat is like reaching out to the companies as us as a consumer too, to kind of advocate for this idea, which is not something that I really thought of before, but I'm realizing that we don't just vote with our dollars and pounds and euros, but we also vote with our how we kind of get them to influence this decision too. So I guess how is, right now during coronavirus pandemic, is it like companies are reluctant to work right now, or is it that, same old?
it's a really interesting situation, because where there are some people thinking that you could take advantage of this opportunity. It's also very much not an advantage for a lot of people. A lot of people have been furloughed, so what that means is they are no longer allowed to work in order to be able to still receive their salary from the government. And it means that a lot of the connections that I once had are no longer there. So it's the effort of trying to get back into contact with these people and seeing who is actually available to speak to me about this. The other thing, as you mentioned, how can the everyday consumer help with this project? I would typically have a public address to be sharing with people to let them know where they can send their waste, and I will be putting that back out there. However, at the moment, because we're being encouraged to work from home, it's a matter of individually letting people know where they can send it, as opposed to compromising my own privacy and my own safety. So it's a very difficult situation at the moment, for sure. And
it's a very
the other
tricky
thing
balance.
is, oh, definitely. And on top of that, all of your sales would slowly have to be, or not just sales, all of your presence in general would have to be moved to online. So where I would usually be going to market stalls and showing people the product and they can see it with their own eyes and see what a fantastic product it is, I no longer have that connection. So I'm having to be a little bit more innovative about how I approach this. And it's not necessarily an area that I've delved into before. So as, I guess, a solo entrepreneur, it's definitely a learning curve, but there are all lessons worth sharing in that.
Exactly.
So.
And I think just it's tough for big companies to kind of navigate through this pandemic, but it's even tougher as a young entrepreneur with a small business because you're in a much bigger uncharted territory and with much less resources. So that's why I always try to ask this question that, how can an average person go about helping the small business. So, well, last question that we'll get to is that what has been your most proud and challenging achievement so far working towards CosWatercolours?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, that's really okay. So, there were. I mean, there's been quite a few achievements, I guess. But I think it's more difficult because it's not necessarily the things that I was aiming for. It's just things that happened. So of course, being given the opportunity to speak at places like Wired, being able to take part in workshops like material designers, being given so my project went viral on Facebook when it first came out, and it got picked up by Reuters, which is all really cool stuff. But it's just a matter of trying, I guess, challenge is trying to make something of it. So at the time where I wasn't really sure what I was doing about the project, it almost feels like I had a lot of missed opportunities, and I didn't make use of the publicity that I was getting then. It's only now that I realize this is actually really important and people still want the product and are still asking me about it, that I realize I should really be getting my butt in gear and actually doing something about this. So it's kind of resetting and reinvigorating the business, and my motivations as well, which I have completely renewed, and I have so much more energy for this, and I'm determined to make it work. So it's definitely been a really interesting and fun journey, but also very challenging, and definitely you do have that little bit of, oh gosh, is this actually going to work or not?
Yeah, you give a twofold answer. That's really clever, by the way. So, and I would recommend people going to your page, CosWatercolours, and following along your journey. I know you paint too. There are some incredible paintings that you do, and then you're figuring out really the packaging from top to bottoms, and working with 3D printers, and trying to come up with like the capsule designs of those things. So it's really not just about the watercolor paint that you're going to sell, but also about the journey of trying to create that business. I would recommend everybody going to your page and checking that out. Do you have any last words for the audience?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, the whole business and the whole idea is all surrounded with circular economy design principles, whether that's stackable half pans or whatnot. So I guess my last words would be, have a look into the circular economy if you've not known much about it. Have a look at my page, of course, and if you're interested in art and design, have a look at my products that are available and will continue to be released. And if you are in the UK and want to send over some of your makeup, in fact, even if you're not in the UK and you still want to send it over, by all means, reach out to me. I'd like to think that I'm quite approachable. So by all means, send me a DM. And let's see what we can do. I'd love to be here to collaborate with you all. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone who's joined as well. And I've seen all the little comments. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer them.
Yeah, and then I've been trying to get to all these comments. So I hope I answered everybody's questions. And thank you for joining us on the second episode. I know
it's been a pleasure.
You have a lot. Yeah, thank you. So Ameenah Begum, everybody, CosWatercolours. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.